Every day, global pharmacovigilance systems absorb an immense volume of spontaneous adverse event reports. Relying solely on passive surveillance, waiting for severe outcomes to bubble up through this noise leaves critical blind spots. Standard safety protocols are highly effective at catching serious adverse events, or SAEs, associated with a product. It requires rapid communication and targeted monitoring, even if the event does not currently meet the standard criteria for seriousness. This systematic approach allows organizations to identify specific risks early. Safety monitoring becomes a search for anticipated threats, rather than a response to severe clinical outcomes that have already occurred. When a theoretical risk is identified in a product's preclinical or early trial phases, regulators expect that specific risk to be systematically tracked throughout the entire life cycle of the drug. Building a dedicated AESI architecture requires early risk parameters from a risk management plan to translate directly into the safety database. Its defining feature is an unbroken, auditable data thread from the initial risk document down to individual case validation. If an inspector finds a disconnection anywhere in this data pipeline, if an event is named in the protocol but untracked in the safety database, it constitutes a critical compliance gap. Surviving regulatory scrutiny requires concrete execution. Regulators prioritize the actual mechanics of data capture over the existence of a high-level risk management plan. The AESI pipeline begins long before a clinical trial launches. Risks are pre-specified based on preclinical animal data, the known effects of similar drug classes, or theoretical concerns regarding the disease's immunopathogenesis. Once trials begin across different global sites, investigators might report the exact same medical event using slightly different clinical terminology. If left unchecked, these variations fragment the data and obscure emerging patterns. To prevent this fragmentation, global health authorities provide standardized frameworks to define specific medical conditions. Utilizing frameworks like the Brighton collaboration provides investigators with strict diagnostic criteria, ensuring global data uniformity across complex, multinational clinical programs. By enforcing standardized definitions at the point of capture, the incoming data becomes uniform enough to be mathematically validated during later phases of safety analysis. When an adverse event occurs, standard individual case safety reports are generated. However, these routine reports rarely contain the necessary clinical depth to properly validate an AESI. Safety databases require strict coding strategies using the Medical Dictionary for Regulatory Activities, or NEDRA, to ensure nuanced clinical events are categorized accurately. Predefined AESIs map to standardized MEDRA queries, or SMQs, grouping distinct clinical terms under a single umbrella. This acts as a selective net, automatically flagging incoming safety reports containing terms matching predefined risk criteria. Once an AESI is flagged, safety teams are required to deploy targeted questionnaires to supplement the initial report with explicit detail. These questionnaires force the collection of specific data points that standard forms miss, such as exact symptom onset timelines, relevant patient medical history, and concomitant medications. Crucially, they capture de-challenge and re-challenge data, documenting what happens to the patient when the drug is stopped and if symptoms return if the drug is administered again. This is essential for assessing causality. Precision data collection via these targeted follow-ups separates a true product-specific safety signal from random background noise. The global COVID-19 mass immunization campaign presented a unique scale of difficulty, tracking ultra-rare AESIs across billions of administered doses. Analysts isolate signals by establishing a population background rate from historical data. Post-market surveillance data is plotted over this baseline. A sudden spike creates an observed to expected, or OE ratio, providing the mathematical proof to validate an emerging safety signal. Using this method, myocarditis was confirmed as an AESI signal associated with certain mRNA platforms, prompting immediate active surveillance and label updates based directly on OE ratio confirmation. Similarly, thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, or TTS, emerged as a distinct rare AESI linked to adenoviral Lemter platforms. By utilizing exact OE ratio mechanics, global pharmacovigilance systems rapidly adapted safety labels. They protected public health by converting theoretical concerns into actionable, quantified metrics. Once a product hits the market, the volume of incoming safety reports makes manual tracking of every potential AESI functionally impossible. To manage this, modern pharmacovigilance integrates AI-augmented workflows. These systems handle the initial case processing, coding, and triaging of reports against predefined AESI parameters. However, this automation operates under a strict regulatory constraint, known as human-in-the-loop governance. Algorithms efficiently flag potential signals and route data, but human clinical expertise remains strictly necessary to interpret the medical context of that data and determine the appropriate regulatory escalation. AI increases the speed of data capture, but human-in-the-loop governance guarantees the medical integrity of the final regulatory action. During a pharmacovigilance inspection, regulatory authorities approach this entire system with a highly specific focus. Inspectors look first for strict procedural alignment. They verify that the AESI monitoring procedures delineated in the clinical protocol match exactly with what is written in the investigator's brochure. Then they assess the execution of the entire data pipeline. They trace the audit trail directly from the initial risk management plan, down through the SMQ strategies, to the validation records. Closing an AESI case with missing targeted questionnaire data is a major procedural failure, indicating the system ignored the exact risks it was designed to monitor. Global health authorities evaluate systematic execution over theoretical planning. A fully traceable, rigorously executed AESI strategy provides concrete evidence that an organization is anticipating and managing risk. This level of execution proves that an organization is systematically managing risks before they result in adverse outcomes.